On the edge, Taiwan's capital signals a possible easing of COVID-19 restrictions. Fraud jeopardizes Taiwan's biggest domestic missile system. Back to lockdown. Hong Kong has some of the world's strictest COVID restrictions and is about to get tougher. Lighting up the night, we take you to the southern city of Kaohsiung for a spectacular Lantern Festival drone performance. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. On Thursday, Taiwan reported 37 new domestic cases of COVID-19 and 46 imported cases. While most of the local infections were in areas surrounding Taipei, the city's mayor says the capital may relax restrictions next week. Louise Watt reports.
Taipei authorities are on edge after a woman who works in one of the capital's busiest commercial buildings tested positive earlier this week. The worker at auditing firm Deloitte is part of a family of 4 from New Taipei City, confirmed as having the virus. The Taipei Nanshan Plaza is the city's second tallest building and home to many financial and corporate names. The deputy mayor said they needed to act to prevent community spread.
那职场大楼总共有将近7000名的工作同仁，所以我们希望他们能够做相关的自我采检或快筛。
Despite the fears, cases in the capital on Wednesday remained in the single digits, and Taipei's mayor said the situation was stabilizing.
过了这个礼拜 ，OK， 都没有不明感染源，我们就要一步一步放。
If that happens, food and drink will be allowed again in cinemas, public meals for the elderly would restart, and schools would be able to hold sports contests. The mayor says that could all happen from next Tuesday, if things are stable over the next few days. Chris Ma and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's National Dongshan Institute of Science and Technology reaffirmed that alleged fraud in the production of its Skybow missile system would not affect national security. This comes after a Taiwanese magazine revealed that local contractors involved in the missile's production were using inferior materials from China that could severely affect the system's capabilities. Jaime Ocon reports.
This is the Skybow missile defense system, one of the most advanced weapon systems made in Taiwan, and it's supposed to keep the country safe from incoming artillery. But recent reports from Taiwan's Mirror Media magazine claim that some parts used in the weapon systems were sourced from China and of inferior quality or even fake, particularly the components that power the system overall.
气控整流器控制电流电压，那也包括飞弹的控制系统。 包括它的那个翼的那个制动器，都会受到影响，
导致天宫可能无法发射的意思。
有这种风险。
Taiwan has spent more than $2.5 billion on the production of its Skybow 3 missile system, which was announced in 2015. Onsen Taiwan Cosmetics Corporation and Burnaby Light Technology Corporation are the contractors involved in supplying the power products for the missiles. Onsen's founder and his sons, who were involved with Burnaby, were indicted for fraud and forgery last year, accused of delivering second-hand electronics made in China with fake serial numbers and forged certificates. They allegedly profited almost $3.5 million from the deal. The Mirror magazine reports also claim that some of the parts the contractors use in the defense systems can be purchased on regular shopping sites like Taobao, raising concerns over the functionality and security of Taiwan's defense assets.
是不是有内神通外鬼的情形？国防部、检调单位以及中科院本身应该要详细调查。
The Skybow 3 defense system plays a fundamental role in safeguarding the country, especially if China, which claims Taiwan as a breakaway province, were to use force to unify the island with the mainland. But no matter how advanced Taiwan's Skybow system is, it won't make a difference if its missiles can't take to the sky. Kamashu and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is upping its national capacity to test produce imported from Fukushima and neighbouring Japanese prefectures for radioactivity. The country is due to relax its ban on produce from the area around the nuclear power plant damaged in the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. The government said the move will aid Taiwan's entry into the trade bloc, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP. But local authorities and the opposition party Kuomintang have kicked back, claiming food safety has been put at risk.
A radioactive issue. Authorities across Taiwan are preparing to handle newly approved imports from Japan's Fukushima, the site of one of the world's largest nuclear disasters. But not everyone is rushing to comply with the relaxation of a decade-long ban. The mayors of 2 of Taiwan's counties have opposed the central government's move and told traders to separate Fukushima imports from other produce. A major opposition party, the Kuomintang, or KMT, continues to take the government to task on the issue.
全台湾民众最关心的食安问题是一项非常严重的冲击，也对于2018年779万民意公投的结果是完全的践踏，彻底的撕毁。
President Tsai Ing-wen and her ruling Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP, claim the move will gain Tokyo's support for Taiwan's application to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the CPTPP. This massive trade bloc is composed of 11 countries around the Pacific Rim, including Canada, Japan, and New Zealand. Joining the bloc would boost trade and could help Taiwan reduce its economic reliance on China at a time when tensions are rising across the strait. And, on the back of referendum wins late last year, Tsai has the political confidence to pursue international ties and trade in the face of local opposition. A DPP poll says nearly 60% of the population support relaxing the ban.
这个决定就如同去年的公投结果，台湾人民向世界表达了台湾愿意接受国际标准，有决心解决困难的贸易问题。
Japan's foreign ministry has welcomed the move, and Fukushima farmers are looking forward to the new export market. But it's not clear whether this means Japan will now support Taiwan's entry to the CPTPP, and what other obstacles could still lay in the way of joining the trade pact. Klein Wang and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
Our reporter Rick Lowett spoke to Dr. Roy Chun-li of the Zhonghua Institution for Economic Research to find out whether lifting the ban could help Taiwan's trading status.
The ban on the Fukushima and the surrounding 4 prefectural foods has been Japan's major complaint as a kind of unreasonable barrier to Japan. So removal of this obstacle is actually a very important step in refining Taiwan and Japan bilateral economic relationship. And the second implication is, of course, it facilitates Taiwan's CPTPP application. Now, according to the CPTPP's accession procedural rules, all new applicants face a kind of 2-step process of accession. The first step, or the first phase of application, is actually to address all bilateral concerns with current CPTPP members before we can reach the milestone of creating a working group to assess the Taiwan's and other countries' applications. So Taiwan right now is actually on this first phase of application. So the objective is actually to address all bilateral concerns. Now on this Taiwan-Japan bilateral pair, everybody knows that the most important concern that Japan has been consistently raising is the Fukushima food ban.
Several US states have announced they will remove indoor mask mandates as the country seeks to reduce restrictions on daily life. It follows similar decisions in European countries where, despite the high cases, vaccination rates are keeping hospital admissions down. But as James Chater reports, some think the loosening of restrictions may be hasty.
Suited, booted, and of course, masked. But these images from the US state of Rhode Island could soon be a thing of the past. Rhode Island is one of several mostly Democrat-led states that have announced plans to remove indoor mask mandates in the coming weeks, including Massachusetts, California, and New York. The decisions come as politicians seek to normalize coexistence with COVID.
We are relieved to now be in a place where we can provide young people additional relief from COVID-19 restrictions so they can continue to move towards normalcy in the classroom.
But not everyone is happy with the speed of the relaxation. Officials in Los Angeles County say they'll keep the indoor mask mandate, even as other areas in the state ease restrictions. And despite official pronouncements, nationwide public debate over the masks continue.
I just think a mask is a very easy thing to do. It's very easy to put on. I understand that, it can be uncomfortable for some people, but I just think it's such an easy thing to do to keep people safer.
In New York, no relaxation of mandates in schools, but mask wearing in all other indoor facilities will be optional from Thursday. But signs state officials might be moving ahead of federal guidance.
What I will say, though, is, our hospitalizations are still high. Our death rates are still high. So as we work towards that and as we are encouraged by the current trends, we are not there yet.
It's not just in the US that bolder steps towards coexistence with COVID are being taken. On Wednesday in London, where mask mandates have already been lifted, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson told MPs that the relaxation in England was going one step further.
Provided the current encouraging trends in the data continue, it is my expectation that we will be able to end the last domestic restrictions, including the legal requirement to self-isolate if you test positive, a full month early.
Johnson's statement comes as the Czech Republic announced it would be lifting all restrictions at the beginning of March. Denmark lifted all restrictions last week, the first EU country to do so. The removal of restrictions is welcome news to most, but some people still aren't quite ready to consign this most recognizable symbol of the pandemic to history. Damon Lin and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
As we've heard, countries around the world are now adopting vastly different strategies for dealing with COVID-19, with some moving to the endemic stage. I spoke with Professor Chen Jianren, a Johns Hopkins-trained epidemiologist who was also Taiwan's vice president when the virus first emerged in China. He raises concerns about lack of vaccines in poorer regions like Africa.
The low immunization coverage means that the possibility to have an emergence of another variant is quite likely. I can assure that if there's more than 70% of the entire world population were immunized by 2 doses of vaccine, I think it may be the time for the endemic to transform this pandemic into the endemic.
So we're actually talking many, many years then?
No, it will depend on how can we help each other. For the Africa, and they can have a very good immunization coverage. It can be done within by the end of this year, or maybe mid 2023.
Many countries are going to boosters, saying now everybody must get their booster shot. Do you believe this is the right way to deal with variants? Does that mean that every time there's a new variant, we have to get another booster?
It might not necessary to have the 4th dose or 5th dose because we have reached the plateau of the neutralizing antibody. And the 3 doses also can stimulate the very good cellular immunity of the T cells. After the 3 dose got the infection, his antibody might be boosted again.
So we are 2 years, more than 2 years since COVID-19 first emerged. And yet we still don't have an agreement on the origins of this virus. What do you think about the origins? Where do you think this originated?
If I were able to do the investigation, I would like to interview all these early 100 cases in December 2019, and I would like to ask them where have they been and do very intensive epidemiological investigation in order to trace back when and where they got the infection. If we cannot interview these persons, then there's no way to identify. But so far, even World Health Organization sent delegations to Wuhan. They did not get this first-hand data.
Officials in the US and Canada are warning that protests by Canadian truckers could impact supply chains between the two countries. The demonstrations, originally sparked by Canada's vaccine mandates, are now in their third week. But in recent days, the protests have increasingly focused on blocking key gateways into the United States. Canadian car factories are already reporting parts shortages after traffic at the busiest land crossing in North America was blocked by protesters.
Bridge is Canada's busiest link to the United States and accounts for about 25% of trade between the two countries. And so the blockade poses a risk to supply chains for the auto industry because the bridge is a key conduit for motor vehicles, components and parts, and delays risk disrupting auto production.
Daily COVID-19 cases in Hong Kong have topped 1,000 for the first time since the start of the pandemic, triggering a new round of restrictions. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick has more.
Vegetable shortages and a run on hairdressers before shops are forced to close. Scenes like this played out across Hong Kong as the city imposes its toughest restrictions yet in response to what's being called the fifth wave. For the first time since the start of the pandemic, COVID-19 infections surged to over 1,000 daily cases.
都好可惜嘅，其實因為髮型屋本身佢都做咗好多措施，譬如話佢一路疫情以嚟一路飛開咧，都係戴住口罩，其實都應該 OK 㗎嘛。咁好無奈咯，冇辦法啦，政府嘅措施。
Besides the closures of many businesses, the new measures include a cap of just 2 people on gatherings and mass mandatory testing. Since Hong Kong requires the hospitalization of anyone who tests positive, isolation wards across the territory are nearing capacity. At testing sites, the frustration was apparent.
呢個新年真係唔開心，但就想平安咯，亦都困擾咗好耐，其實好無奈。政府嘅處理我亦唔知佢點樣啦，即係俾呢個疫情重複咁，即係精神即係好飽受呢個折磨啊。
Authorities are aggressively seeking a return to zero COVID, but not all residents are on board.
Now, like all the restaurants are closed and everywhere is closed, and the economics already getting back impact. So, I guess living with the COVID would be the best solution and the easiest way.
Experts too are wary, with some urging the government to consider an alternative path.
Singapore, for example, decided that after vaccines were widely available, it didn't really make sense to keep going with zero COVID because you could combine vaccines with some public health measures and have an overall strategy that was better for the economy and also balance the need to protect public health.
Since the pandemic began, Hong Kong has been one of the most isolated major cities in the world. Residents have been promised travel bubbles and reopened borders as a reward for their cooperation with public health mandates. But nearly 2 years on, little has changed. This fifth wave will be a test of the government's capability to consider a different tack. Millions of Hong Kongers will be awaiting the results. Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick for TaiwanPlus.
Russia and Belarus are due to launch 10 days of joint military exercises near the Ukrainian border as tensions remain high over a possible invasion of the Eastern European country. Russia deployed nearly 30,000 troops to the area along with surface-to-air missile systems and fighter jets to take part in the large-scale military exercises. President Vladimir Putin has reportedly said that the troops will leave once the drills are ended in 10 days. But the US has described the action as escalatory. 100,000 Russian troops are estimated to have amassed near the Ukraine border. Coming up, we tell you why 2 US-born athletes competing under China's flag in the Olympics are sparking a debate on nationality. Details after the break.
Welcome to Legit Mando. Let's watch and find out how to use 你我他 in everyday life.
我的名字是 Nick， 你呢？达娜？
我喜欢你。
我喜欢爱着你的感觉。
So is this how you get so many people to like you?
尴尬了。
你的名字是小地瓜，我在吃地瓜。I'm eating sweet potato.
Are you threatening me? Is this a threat? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Skier Li Wenyi has made Olympic history for Taiwan at the Beijing Games. Li is the country's first female alpine skier to make it to the Winter Olympics. On Wednesday, she competed in the women's slalom run, finishing last in 50th place, but she managed to complete the course while 38 other competitors failed to finish. In her first run, Li missed a gate and had to go back uphill to hit it on the second attempt. The Russian figure skater who made history at the Olympics with the first quadruple jump by a woman has tested positive for a banned drug. 15-year-old Kamila Valieva captured the world's attention with her spectacular performance last week. But her entire figure skating team's gold-winning performance at the 2022 Winter Games is now at risk. A sample taken before the teenager's arrival in Beijing registered as positive. Russian media reports the drug was identified as a medicine used to treat chest pain. The drug is banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency as a stimulant. 2 US-born female athletes competing under the China flag at the Beijing Games have been the source of heated debate in both countries, with starkly contrasting fates. While Eileen Gu was lauded in China after claiming gold in the women's free ski big air, many in the US have hit out at her decision to represent her mother's country. Meanwhile, Beverly Zhu was criticized on Chinese social media after she fell in the team skating competition. Our reporter Bing Wang spoke to Stanley Thangaraj, professor of race and sports at City College of New York, to find out why the international responses to Gu and Yi have been so different.
The local response in the U.S. has really focused on talking about, why can't they be committed to the U.S.? Why can't they play for the U.S.? Especially these two athletes, Yi and Gu, are understood as almost like traitors. Gu has very much shown with her Twitter following and the various endorsement of brands and the incredible global appeal she has. Her mixed race heritage is also what a lot of nations around the world are doing to showcase how cosmopolitan they are, provides incredible traction for China to completely dismiss, if they choose to, any claims of racism. And they have very serious human rights issues, various forms of authoritarianism that limit protest.
Especially with these very intense times between the US and China, has that had any effects with how these athletes are portrayed?
Because one of the things we have to account for is how geopolitical conditions outside of sport always inform sport and the politics within sport. Why do we not have the same criticism of those that represent the U.S. to say, how can you represent the U.S. during this time of such anti-Black racism, anti-Asian racism, an attack on the poor, caging of children on the U.S.-Mexico border, the increased presence of the U.S. and continued wars in the Middle East, and also to talk about a complex identity that is built across nations, that choosing one nation over the other is not a choice to choose, to be against human rights, to be against civil rights, but rather it might mean something very different individually and personally, right? To always imagine the affiliation with China through the larger political realm also doesn't get at the various types of personal connections, the pleasures, the joys of choosing to play for China that might attend to one's own family history.
Some 1,500 drones illuminated the skies above the Kaohsiung Music Center in southern Taiwan on Wednesday night as part of celebrations for this year's Lantern Festival. Our reporter Pichi Zhuang takes us to the light show.
A tiger head rises up to 175 meters above the Love River Bay in southern Taiwan's Kaohsiung City. It's just one of the impressive displays lighting up the skies in the southern port city for the Lantern Festival. The drone performance is the biggest of its kind yet seen in Taiwan. It has taken a local stage design company working with international teams half a year to put the show together. The spectacle features a rotating Earth 130 meters in diameter, bigger by a third than the one showcased at the opening of the Tokyo Olympics last year. The displays also includes dynamic 3D animations with distinctive symbols of Taiwan and Taiwanese culture, folktales, the national flag, microchip technology, ocean culture, and the nation's top badminton player, world number 1 戴资颖。
1500台无人机的展演在国内是首次，有的视觉影像是最台湾更国际的。
The city government is planning another 4 drone shows this month to celebrate Lantern Festival, which marks the close of the Lunar New Year period. Rick Yi and Peachy Zhang for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, today we leave you with some behind the scenes of the making of this Sunday's Puppy Bowl, featuring a record 103 puppies. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.